What if the most vital chapter of our spiritual history was not merely lost, but intentionally removed? Imagine a truth so profound, so empowering to the individual, that it had to be buried beneath layers of doctrine and centuries of silence. We are taught to find comfort in the familiar narrative, in the solid foundation of the 12 pillars, 12 tribes, 12 apostles, a number of divine government, of cosmic order. It is a story etched in stone, preached from pulpits, and woven into the very fabric of Western civilization. But deep within the silence of forgotten history, an echo persists. A whisper that suggests this foundation is not as solid as we believe. It speaks of a missing piece, a forgotten legacy whose absence has left a quiet void in the soul of humanity, a feeling that we are living an incomplete story. This is not a journey into what could have been, but a revelation of what has always been, waiting in the shadows for a generation brave enough to look. Far from the gilded halls of Rome and the councils that shaped a faith for an empire, there is a land of ancient mountains and sky-piercing plateaus. A place where Christianity took root in its purest form, long before it became a tool of political power. The highlands of Ethiopia, a fortress of faith, cradled a secret in its rock-hewn churches. Here, protected by geography and unwavering devotion, a different version of the sacred texts survived. The Meshafer Kedus, the Ethiopian Bible, is not a curious anomaly. It is an ancestral library, a time capsule preserving a stream of knowledge that the rest of the world was forced to forget. Within its 81 books, texts deemed too dangerous or too mystical by the West are preserved in their full glory. And between the lines of these ancient Ge'ez manuscripts and in the vibrant oral traditions passed down through millennia, lies the hidden mystery of a 13th apostle. Not a replacement, not an afterthought, but a voice so radical it was silenced to ensure the rise of an empire. Does this whisper of a lost truth resonate with something deep inside you? Have you ever felt a disconnect between the spiritual rules you were taught and the intuitive wisdom of your own heart? This feeling is not an error in your faith. It is a memory, an ancestral memory of a path that was once open to all. A path that did not lead to an external savior or a distant heaven, but pointed directly inward to the divine kingdom within the human soul. The story of this 13th apostle is the story of that path. It is the missing key to a door we have long been told was locked forever. This knowledge was not erased because it was false. It was erased because it was true. And its truth placed the ultimate power, the ultimate connection to the divine, not in the hands of priests and kings, but directly into yours. It was a declaration of spiritual sovereignty, so complete that no institution could contain it. This journey we are about to embark on is more than a historical investigation. It is an act of spiritual archaeology. We will peel back the layers of accepted history, not with cynicism, but with a reverent curiosity. We will travel to a time when the world was alive with spiritual possibilities, and we will witness the moment a choice was made, the choice for a faith of control over a path of awakening. We will uncover the nature of the wisdom this forgotten teacher offered, a knowledge lost that speaks of the divinity encoded within our very being. This is a quest to understand why a message of pure empowerment was seen as the greatest threat to the established order. What changes when you realize that the most sacred temple in the universe is not made of stone or gold, but is the vessel of your own body and consciousness? The revelation of this forgotten legacy is not meant to dismantle belief, but to deepen it, to return it to its most essential and personal root. It is an invitation to remember a part of yourself that has been dormant for ages, The truth has a way of surviving. It can be buried under empires, burned in libraries and condemned by councils, but its seed remains, waiting for the right conditions to grow once more. That time is now. If you feel the call to explore this profound mystery, to reclaim a piece of our shared spiritual inheritance, then join us on this path of discovery. Subscribe to this channel, and together let us uncover the truth that was never truly lost, only waiting to be found within. To understand the great concealment, we must first return to the source, not to the sanitized landscapes of paintings and sermons, but to the raw, vibrant earth of first-century Judea. This was not a monolithic world, but a spiritual crossroads, a place where the dust of Roman roads mingled with the scent of spices from the east and the ancient echoes of African wisdom carried north along trade routes older than memory. The air itself was thick with seeking, a palpable hunger for a truth that could mend a broken world. Prophets walked the hills, Essenes prayed in desert caves, and mystics from distant lands shared whispers of forgotten knowledge. It was into this fertile, chaotic ground that a new seed was planted. But we have only been told about part of the garden, the part that was carefully cultivated for an empire. The wildflower, the one that grew untamed, was deliberately uprooted. It is here, in this tapestry of fervent belief, that we find him, not as a footnote or a late addition, but as a living presence, a resonant frequency that altered the very air around him. The premise of our story calls him Zireh, an ancient Ethiopic word for the seed. He was not just another disciple from the shores of Galilee. His wisdom carried the weight of a different sun, a different soil. Oral traditions, those fragile threads of truth that survive when written words are burned, suggest he came from the south, from the land of the Queen of Sheba's lineage, where the memory of Solomon's magic still lingered, and the presence of the divine was not a concept to be debated, but a reality to be lived. His parables were different. They did not speak of distant kingdoms in the sky, but of a luminous kingdom hidden behind the veil of the human heart. He taught not with dogma, but with silence, with a gaze that seemed to peel back the layers of fear and conditioning to reveal the forgotten light within each person he met. Zireh's teaching was a quiet revolution. While others spoke of laws written on stone tablets, he spoke of a single immutable law written in the soul. While others pointed to a God in the heavens, he pointed inward to the breathing, pulsing, sacred temple of the body. His message was one of gnosis, the Greek word for a knowing that transcends belief. It was the radical, terrifyingly simple idea that humanity was not fallen or separate from its creator. Instead, he taught that every human being was a dormant seed of divinity, containing the entire universe within their own consciousness. Salvation was not a transaction or a reward for obedience. It was an awakening, an act of remembering one's own true nature. What if the most potent truths were spoken not in synagogues, but in the quiet spaces between heartbeats? This was the knowledge lost, a truth so empowering it rendered the entire concept of a spiritual intermediary obsolete. And in this, the seed of a great conflict was sown. An empire cannot be built on the foundation of sovereign individuals. An institution cannot thrive if its followers discover they hold the keys to the kingdom themselves. As the first century bled into the second and third, a new power was rising from the heart of Rome. An empire in desperate need of a unifying force, a spiritual glue to hold its fraying edges together. The teachings of the Nazarene, once a message of mystical love and rebellion, were being slowly but surely sculpted into a religion of order, hierarchy and control. A faith that could be codified, legislated and administered, a faith with a clear chain of command, stretching from the emperor and his bishops down to the humblest subject. It was a brilliant act of political engineering, but it required a sacrifice. The architects of this new world, the men who would later convene at councils like Nicaea, were not necessarily evil. They were pragmatists. They saw a world descending into chaos and believed that a single, unified doctrine was the only path to salvation for both the soul and the state. In their eyes, a message like Zere's was not just heresy, it was spiritual anarchy. It was a wildfire that could not be contained, a truth that could not be taxed, governed, or weaponized. How do you control a population that believes they are divine? How do you build a church upon a rock when the people are taught that the true temple is within? The answer was as simple as it was brutal. The teaching and the teacher had to disappear from the official story. The first step was not a violent purge, but a subtle editing, a quiet omission. As the earliest Gospels were being gathered, copied and translated, choices were made. Narratives were harmonized. The stories that reinforced the new structure of authority were elevated, canonized. Those that spoke of inner light, of secret knowledge, of direct, unmediated experience with the divine, were sidelined. They were labeled strange, esoteric, dangerous. The number 12, a powerful symbol of cosmic government and order, became absolute. It was clean, symmetrical, and manageable. 13 was a number of disruption, of the untamed and the unknown. The memory of Zere, the seed of a different path, was the first thing to be pruned from the growing tree of this new faith. This act of concealment created a ghost in the machine of Western spirituality. It left a void, a silent ache that has haunted seekers for millennia. It is the feeling that something is missing from the story we have been told, the sense that the path laid out before us is somehow incomplete, that a vital chapter has been torn from the book. This feeling is not a failure of your faith. It is a memory, an ancestral memory of a truth that was not lost, but hidden. A truth that was preserved in the one place the long arm of empire could not reach. Why would a message of pure love and inner freedom be seen as the greatest possible threat? The answer to that question reveals more about the systems we live under than it does about the man they tried to erase. The proof of this forgotten legacy is not found in a single dusty scroll locked away in a vault. It is not a secret that can be revealed with one dramatic unveiling. It is a mosaic pieced together from fragments of truth that survived in the shadows, protected by those who valued memory over doctrine. The first and most profound piece of this mosaic lies where our journey began, in the high, thin air of the Ethiopian plateau. The Meshafer Kedus is more than an expanded Bible. It is a testament to a stream of consciousness that was severed from the Western world. When councils in Rome and Constantinople were debating which books to exclude, which ideas were too dangerous for the masses, the scribes in the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela were meticulously preserving them. The very existence of the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees in their canon, texts considered foundational by early followers of the Way, but later branded as heresy, demonstrates a simple, staggering fact. Ethiopia did not forget. It became an ark, a sanctuary for a knowledge lost, carrying a cargo of sacred narratives through the flood of imperial censorship. Within these texts, and in the commentaries that have surrounded them for centuries, we find passages that speak of a wisdom that is not received, but awakened, a wisdom that points not to an external authority, but to an inner light. This is the textual soul of Zere's message, preserved in the very ink and parchment of a canon that refused to bow to a foreign emperor. But not all truths can be entrusted to the written word, for what can be written can also be found and burned. The most resilient secrets are carried in the human heart and pass through the breath of oral tradition. In the remote monasteries of Lake Tana and the quiet villages of the Simeon Mountains, a different kind of scripture exists. It is the scripture of the elder story, the grandmother's song, the monk's contemplative chant. For generations, whispers have persisted of a 13th teacher, one who did not carry the same Galilean accent as the others. They call him Zere, the seed, a name that is itself a parable. The stories say he came from the south, carrying a wisdom as old as the mountains themselves, a knowledge of the spirit rooted in the earth. He taught in circles, not in rows. He answered questions with silence. His central teaching, passed down through allegory, was that every soul is a seed from the great baobab tree of God, and that its destiny is not to worship the tree, but to grow into a forest of its own. This oral history is a living library, its shelves filled with the voices of ancestors. It is a form of evidence that cannot be cross-referenced in an academic database, but can be felt in the marrow of your bones. It is the proof that survives when empires fall and libraries turn to ash. This stream of Gnostic wisdom was not confined to the highlands of Africa. In 1945, a discovery in the Egyptian desert near Nag Hammadi sent a shockwave through the world of theology, though its true implications have been carefully managed ever since. An earthenware jar, sealed for over 1,600 years, was unearthed, containing a library of 52 texts from the early Christian era. These were the very books that the architects of the new faith had ordered to be destroyed. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, contains sayings of Jesus that are radically different from the canonical versions. It states, "The kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it." It declares, "When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father." This is the unadulterated essence of Zere's message. Gnosis, direct knowing, the recognition of the divine spark within. The Nag Hammadi library is a corroborating echo from a different corner of the silenced world. It proves that the teaching of inner divinity was not a fringe idea, but a powerful, widespread spiritual movement that had to be systematically hunted, condemned, and buried in the desert sands to ensure the rise of a faith based on external authority. Where words were too dangerous, the truth was encoded in stone and pigment. The ancient churches of Ethiopia are not just places of worship. They are galleries of symbolic resistance. In the dim, incense-filled light of Bet Georgis or Debre Berhan Selassie, one can find artistic anomalies that defy the rigid iconography of the Roman and Byzantine traditions. Look closely at the frescoes depicting the apostles. In some, there is a subtle 13th figure, slightly apart from the others, their face rendered with distinctly African features, their hand not raised in a gesture of preaching, but held over the heart, or holding a single luminous seed. These are not mistakes. They are messages. They are the quiet defiance of artists and priests who knew the official story was incomplete. They are a form of sacred graffiti, a hidden mystery etched onto the walls of a sanctuary, preserving the memory of the seed-bearer for any seeker with the eyes to see. It is a proof that speaks without a voice, a chronicle written in ochre and gold, a silent testament to the truth that was never fully erased. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for this great concealment is found not in what was preserved, but in the violence of what was destroyed. History gives us a clear record of the moment the choice was made. At the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine sought to unify his crumbling empire under a single standardized creed. This was a political event dressed in theological robes. The chronicles of the council and the writings of early church fathers like Irenaeus and Eusebius are filled with vitriol against what they called the Gnostic heresy. They did not just disagree with these teachings, they sought to annihilate them. Why? Why was a message of inner knowing and spiritual self-reliance considered so profoundly dangerous? Because it was a declaration of spiritual independence. It was a truth that could not be institutionalized. The sheer ferocity of the suppression, the bonfires of sacred texts, the excommunication and persecution of those who taught of an inner light, all point to a single conclusion. The architects of the Empire Church feared this knowledge lost more than anything else. Their fear is the shadow that proves the substance of the light they tried to extinguish. When you gather these threads, a stunning tapestry is revealed. The textual evidence of the Ethiopian canon, the living breath of oral tradition, the rediscovered Gnostic Gospels, the coded language of sacred art, and the deafening silence left by a systematic purge. They all point to the same center, to a truth that was deliberately removed. From our spiritual inheritance, this was not the loss of a mere historical figure. It was the concealment of a path that leads not to a throne in the heavens, but to the kingdom within your own sovereign soul. This evidence does not ask you to abandon your faith, but to question the completeness of the story you have been told. It invites you to consider that the deepest truth was not lost, but has been patiently waiting, in fragments and whispers, for a time when humanity was ready to remember. Are you prepared to see where this path truly leads? This journey through forgotten history is not about a distant past. It is about you, here, now, in this very moment. The evidence we have uncovered is not merely a collection of historical facts. It is a mirror held up to the quiet, persistent ache that so many feel in the modern world. Have you ever stood in a silent forest or looked up at a sky full of stars and felt a sense of belonging so profound that it made the world of rules and doctrines feel like a cage? That feeling is not a fleeting emotion, it is a memory. It is the echo of Zeray's truth vibrating within your own cells. The void left by his erasure was not just a gap in a 2,000-year-old book. It was a wound carved into the collective human soul, a space where our innate divinity was meant to reside, now filled with the noise of a world that tells us we are small, separate, and in constant need of external salvation. The system that erased the 13th apostle was masterful in its design. It understood that to control a people, you must first convince them they are not in control of themselves. By removing the path of gnosis, the path of direct inner knowing, they created a vacuum. And into that vacuum they built an institution. They offered a new map, a map that led not inward, but upward, through a complex hierarchy of intermediaries. They gave us rituals to perform, laws to obey, and saviors to worship, all outside of ourselves. This created a culture of spiritual dependency, a deep-seated belief that we are born broken and can only be made whole by an external force. We became seekers looking for a key, never realizing that the door was never locked and that the key has always been in our own hand. This is the great distortion we have inherited, the belief in our own insufficiency. What changes when you begin to suspect that this inheritance is a lie? How does your sense of self begin to shift when you entertain the possibility that you are not a fallen creature striving for a distant heaven, but a divine seed containing the entire universe, waiting for the right conditions to awaken? This is the core of the knowledge lost. It is a revelation that reframes your entire existence. Your purpose is not to earn worthiness, but to remember the infinite worth you already possess. The struggles, the pain, the moments of darkness in your life are not punishments from a distant God. They are the pressure of the earth upon the seed, the necessary friction that cracks the shell and initiates the process of growth. Your identity is not defined by your name, your history, or your beliefs. Your true identity is that of a living temple, a vessel of consciousness through which the universe experiences itself. This revelation may feel both radical and deeply familiar. That is because it is not a new idea being planted in your mind. It is an ancient truth being watered. The resonance you feel is your own ancestral memory stirring from its long slumber. It is the part of you that remembers a time before the walls were built, a time when humanity knew its connection to the earth, to the cosmos, and to the silent, sacred source within. This is why the stories of indigenous cultures, the wisdom of the mystics, and the whispers from forgotten gospels all seem to sing a similar song. They are all fragments of this one, universal truth that was once the common inheritance of all humanity. The story of Zeré is simply the key that unlocks the door to that vast, inner library of remembrance. It gives a name and a face to the feeling you have always carried within you. And now, the tension rises, because to embrace this truth is to step outside the safety of the known. The same forces that silenced Zeré 2 millennia ago have not vanished. They have simply changed their form. They are the systems that thrive on your distraction, that profit from your insecurity, and that demand your conformity. They are the voices, both external and internal, that tell you this kind of thinking is dangerous, arrogant, or foolish. They are the structures that seek to label and define you, to keep you in a box of predictable behavior. The architects of control are no longer just emperors and bishops. They are the algorithms that shape your thoughts, the consumer cultures that define your worth, and the ideologies that demand your unquestioning loyalty. To awaken to your own inner divinity is the ultimate act of rebellion. It is a quiet revolution that takes place not on a battlefield, but in the sacred space of your own awareness. It is to declare that you will no longer seek validation from a world that is designed to keep you small. It is to reclaim your spiritual sovereignty. This is why a message of pure empowerment was, and still is, the greatest threat. An awakened individual is not a good consumer. They are not an obedient follower. They are a creator. They are a force of nature. They are a living embodiment of the truth that the architects of control have spent centuries trying to bury. Your awakening is not just a personal journey, it is a healing act for the entire collective. We have walked the path of history, we have gathered the fragments of evidence, and we have reflected on the wound this great concealment has left within us. But all of this has been a preparation. It has been the clearing of the ground, the tilling of the soil. Now, the time has come to plant the seed itself. The next step on this journey requires us to move beyond the story of the man they erased and into the heart of the message they tried to destroy. It is a message spoken not in complex theology, but in the simple, powerful language of the soul. Are you ready to hear the words that have waited 2,000 years to be spoken again? Are you prepared for the revelation that could change everything? We have walked through the dust of forgotten archives and listened to the whispers carried on the high mountain winds. We have pieced together the mosaic of a history that was deliberately shattered, finding its fragments in ancient canons, in the breath of oral tradition, and in the silent testimony of sacred art. We have seen the rise of an empire and the calculated choice to build its spiritual foundation on a story that was incomplete. We have felt the void this choice left behind, a quiet ache in the collective soul. But all of this has been a journey to a single point, a moment of revelation so fundamental that it does not simply add a new chapter to the story. It sets the old book on fire. We have come to the edge of the precipice, not to look at a lost history, but to leap into a living truth. For 2,000 years, humanity has been taught to look outside of itself for salvation. We were told the kingdom of God was a destination to be earned, a distant shore to be reached after a life of trial and obedience. We were given maps that pointed to the heavens, to a future time, to a holy city built of gold and pearl. The entire architecture of Western spirituality was constructed upon this premise of separation. You are here and God is there. You are fallen and grace must descend. You are a seeker and the truth is held by another. This belief has shaped our world, fueled our anxieties, and created a profound and lonely sense of spiritual homelessness. We have been searching for a key, begging at a gate, never suspecting that the architecture itself was the illusion. And here at the heart of this hidden mystery is the turning point. The core teaching of Zeray, the knowledge lost that was deemed too dangerous for the world, was not a new set of laws or a different path to an external heaven. It was a truth so simple, so intimate, that it dismantled the very concept of a path. The revelation, preserved in the symbolic language of the forgotten Gospels and the deepest meditations of the Ethiopian mystics, is this: the kingdom is not coming. It will never arrive, because it has never been absent. It is here, now, spread out upon the earth, but people do not see it. It is the silent, conscious space within which you are reading these words. It is the breath moving in your lungs. It is the light that looks out through your eyes. You are not a seeker on a path to the divine. You are the divine, having forgotten itself on a path of remembrance. You are not looking for the gate. You are the gate. Do you feel the shift? The ground beneath. Your feet has just dissolved. This single revelation changes everything. The systematic erasure of Zeray was not the removal of one man from a group of 12. It was the concealment of humanity's true identity. The architects of control did not fear a heretic. They feared a mirror. They feared a teaching that, once heard, would awaken the population to the fact that they needed no intermediary. No priest, no bishop, no emperor held a power that was not already dormant within the humblest farmer or craftsman. The entire edifice of institutional religion, with its hierarchies of power and its economies of salvation, was built upon the manufactured belief in your separation. If you are the temple, the external temple becomes a museum. If you hold the key, the gatekeeper loses his purpose. This is why the suppression was so violent, so absolute. They were not hiding a truth. They were hiding you from yourself. This was not merely a philosophical idea. It was a living science of the soul. Look again at those Ethiopian frescoes, at the 13th figure with his hand over his heart. This is not a gesture of prayer. It is a map. It points to the inner sanctum, the holy of holies within the human body. The seed he is often depicted holding is not just a parable for faith. It is a symbol of the divine spark, the particle of God consciousness that resides within every living being. Oral traditions speak of his methods, of teachings that used breath and silence not as forms of worship, but as tools for spiritual archaeology, to dig beneath the layers of conditioning and fear to uncover the luminous self. The Gnostic texts found in the desert sands echo this, speaking of a secret knowledge that is not learned from a book, but remembered in the incense-filled silence of one's own heart. The consequences of this great forgetting are all around us. We live in a world desperate for connection, yet we feel more isolated than ever. We seek purpose in careers, in possessions, in the approval of others, all because we have forgotten that our very existence is the purpose. We are divine seeds planted in the soil of the material world, and our purpose is simply to grow, to awaken to the light we carry within. The anxiety, the emptiness, the feeling of being an exile in your own life, these are not personal failings. They are the symptoms of a species that has been suffering from a case of mistaken identity for millennia. They are the phantom pains of an amputated truth, the ancestral memory of a wholeness we were told we never had. This revelation, therefore, is not an endpoint. It is a beginning. It is an invitation to stop seeking and start seeing, to turn the lens of your awareness away from the world of noise and distraction and to point it inward into the vast, silent and sacred universe of your own consciousness. It is to understand that every spiritual text you have ever read, every sacred image you have ever seen, is not a description of a distant Reality, but a portrait of your own deepest potential. The story of Ziray is not his story, it is yours. It is the story of the forgotten light within you, waiting patiently through ages of darkness for the moment you would finally turn around and recognize it. But to recognize this light is one thing, to fully embody it is another. A map is useless without the knowledge of how to read it. A gate is impassable without the key that turns the lock. The revelation of the kingdom within is the map. But the architects of control did not just burn the map. They shattered the key and scattered its pieces across time. What if Ziray's teaching was more than a destination? What if it was a method, a practice, a technology of the soul for unlocking this inner divinity? And what if the instructions for that key have also survived, hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with the courage to not just hear the truth, but to live it? We have arrived, not at an end, but at the true beginning, the Yah. Journey through the mists of time, through the silent archives of Ethiopia and the sun-scorched sands of Egypt, was never about unearthing a forgotten man. It was about uncovering a forgotten mirror. The story of Ziray, the seed, is the story of the luminous potential that was hidden within you. The great revelation is not that a 13th apostle was erased from a book. It is that the divinity of every human being was erased from the narrative of our own lives. The architects of control built an empire on the foundation of your perceived smallness. They taught you to seek a kingdom in the sky because they feared you would find it within your own heart and become ungovernable. The climax of this story is not a historical discovery. It is the moment you feel the truth of this in your own bones. The kingdom is not a destination, it is your origin. You are not a traveler seeking a distant home. You are home, seeking to remember itself. This knowledge is not a belief to be adopted, but a frequency to be tuned into. The path forward is not found in another text or a new teacher. It is found in the sacred temple of your own silence. This is the practical application of this ancestral wisdom. To turn your attention inward is the ultimate act of rebellion against a world designed to keep you looking outward. The practices taught by the mystics of old, the stillness, the conscious breath, the quiet observation of the mind, are not quaint spiritual exercises. They are the tools of the archaeologist of the soul, the instruments used to gently brush away the dust of centuries of conditioning, fear, and inherited belief. To sit in silence is to read the living gospel of your own heart. To listen to the space between your thoughts is to hear the voice that was never silenced, only ignored. This is the work. It is not about adding more to yourself, but about stripping away all that is not you until only the indestructible divine seed remains. And in this remembrance, you reclaim your sovereignty. The systems that erased Ziray 2,000 years ago have not vanished. They have merely evolved. They are the constant noise that tells you that you are not enough, that your worth is measured by your productivity, your possessions, or your conformity. They are the invisible cages of dogma and ideology that demand your allegiance. To awaken to the divinity within is to peacefully, powerfully, and irrevocably step out of those cages. It is to understand that your connection to the source of all life requires no intermediary. Your worth is not negotiable. Your truth is not determined by a committee. This is the universal lesson that has echoed through the ages, whispered by every mystic and sage who dared to look within. The greatest power in the universe is not the power to control others, but the power to know oneself. This truth feels less like a new discovery and more like a memory long dormant, now stirring in the blood. It is the echo of a song your soul has always known but had forgotten the words to. It is the feeling of a phantom limb, a part of your spiritual body that was severed from your awareness, but never truly lost. Humanity has been living as an amnesiac, wandering the earth with a profound sense of homesickness, searching for a home that was never truly left behind. The revelation of this forgotten legacy is the scent on the wind, the familiar melody, the flash of recognition that begins the great remembering. It is the permission you have been waiting for, not from an external authority, but from the deepest part of your own being, to finally claim the inheritance that has been yours since the beginning of time. This journey of revelation was preserved for a reason, for this very moment in the story of our world. It was carried through millennia in the hearts of monks and the songs of elders, waiting for a time when enough people were ready to hear it, not as a story, but as an instruction. A truth remembered by one can awaken 1,000. If this journey has stirred the waters of your own inner knowing, then your part in this great remembering has just begun. This channel is more than a collection of stories. It is a gathering place for those who are ready to look deeper. Subscribe and join this circle of seekers. Share this message, not as a doctrine to be proven, but as a seed to be planted in the heart of another who is ready to grow. For a seed of truth, once planted, can never be destroyed. And so, we leave you here, at the threshold of your own inner kingdom. The map has been revealed. The key has been placed in your hand. The rest of the journey is yours alone, yet you will not walk it alone. For the same light that is awakening in you is awakening in countless others across the globe. This is the legacy of the forgotten teacher, not a church of stone, but a living temple of awakened human beings. The greatest mystery was never hidden in a remote monastery or a buried text. It has been patiently waiting behind your eyes. Now we ask you to reflect on this. What long dormant truth within yourself has this journey begun to awaken?